Welcome to the Rich Flow of Life podcast. Join Valerie Kanay, the award-winning authority author, as she takes you on a journey for your personal evolution. Valerie Kanay talks to enlightened featured guests who hold the keys to unlock your unique life situation. They each bring to the table their very powerful personal spin to inspire and empower you to learn to step up your game into the rich flow of life.
This is your host, Valerie Kanay, and today our featured guest is Johnny Bluestar, who is the CEO and founder of New Galaxy Enterprise. It is a media content development and promotion company. Johnny has helped a whole lot of clients and people create full nonfiction books, movies, screenplays, TV pilots, animation, and many other numerous products of media that he will share with us on this program today. But hey, check this out, folk. I want to tell you that Johnny has his very own talk radio show. So I'm so glad and so pleased and honored that he is my guest today because I can actually let him fill us in on the wonderful details about himself. So welcome to the program, Johnny. I'm so happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Valerie. I really appreciate being able to be with you today.
You're welcome. So just jump right in with me. I know we're going to be doing a lot of talk about manifestation of your dream in the media. So just entrepreneurship. So let's just start from there and tell me what you want to start with.
Well, I think I'd like to say that I became a freelance writer that is working with clients quite a bit after I started to become a writer.
Okay.
And the way I started was really, I guess I started in second grade because I wrote my first short story in second grade. But I have to tell you, Valerie, that I have a strange side to my writing.
Wow.
Parents decided that I should be a writer before I was born. And they actually gave me a pen name as my middle name that I would use as a writer, which is a strange thing to think about. And I never really dwelt on it. I mean, I never said my parents wanted me to be a writer, but I'm sure that influence was there.
Sure it was.
Later on, I sort of, and I don't think this was necessarily the right thing to do, but I sort of promoted certain things for my children, which was basically that they would become actors, and which is something I also have done and really liked. And so because of that, I realized that, well, just because your parents want you to do something isn't necessarily what you should do or what will actually happen to you. And in my case, I never used their stage name or their pen name. I used my own. But I did become a writer. Here's one of the stories about my life that I think is interesting. My uncle was in charge of advertising for all the major musicals and Broadway shows back in the 60s and the 70s, and I guess the 50s too. And I don't know how this really ties in because it's so bizarre, but in sixth grade, I wrote a short story. And this short story was about alien abduction. Now, this was a long time ago. And I was called into a room with the art teacher and the music teacher, and they said they had chosen my story and another story to become a musical.
Wow. So
actually, they created a real musical with costumes and music and all this, and it was performed in front of the sixth grade audience and their parents. And so I actually had that experience of creating a play in sixth grade.
Very young. Okay. So the gift was there. Like you say, you were born with that. Okay.
There was a sense of destiny about some of the things that happened to me as I moved forward in life. And actually, my interest in writing was purely creative. It was not entrepreneurial or business oriented. And when I was in high school, I decided to become a verse playwright, which is sort of in the genre of, obviously Marlowe or Shakespeare or somebody like that, but also in the modern times, someone like T.S. Eliot or even W.B. Yeats. And I chose as my vehicle neoclassical verse. So by the time I was out of high school, I had written sonnets and all kinds of different types of poetry, from beatnik poetry to very contemporary verse. And I did embody it in two different plays that I wrote. I was working on my third play when I left for college. When I left for college, which was called St. John's College, it was a classical program in the great books. And I became extremely disillusioned with what you call the Western intellectual tradition. I didn't find the answers I was looking for. So I would say a lot of my life was based on a continual sort of spiritual search, and also a search for understanding manifestation of my dreams, which at that point had to do with painting and writing.
Okay, so you're artistic as well. And so when you say a manifestation of your dreams, there's things that you wanted and you desired and to have experiences of. But just give me an example of what sort of things that you were seeking or you wanted to have happen for you at that time.
Well, maybe one of the most interesting examples, and really the first time, even though I had a lot of extremely interesting false starts, was I evolved the idea that I wanted to develop a science fiction series. And I wanted to be a character that I eventually named Ganymede Jones. And while I was in New York as a painter and writer, I got very sick. I lost everything. I wound up in New Orleans for 3 years. Just things didn't go well. And I finally wound up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I had been born in Oklahoma City. So I wound up there. And I had the remnants of a musical I was writing called Libra Unchanged, which was a science fiction musical. And I talked to somebody named Vernon Fleming, and he was working in a clothing shop. He was the booking agent on the side.
Right.
I told him what I wanted to do. I sung some of the songs, and I evolved the idea that I would start in radio.
Okay.
Because radio would be cheaper. And so we got together. And we started to promote this to different recording studios without any kind of satisfaction or success.
You just winged it.
we just tried. We tried. And what happened next was that I had been hired by somebody to run an art gallery there called the Rainbow Man Gallery. And during that time, I connected with a lady named Mary Ellen Smith, who was a broadcaster there, but whose recent husband was named Leo Chandler. Now, Leo Chandler had an extraordinary story because Leo Chandler had been in jail for the rest of his life because he was a 3-time loser in Oklahoma because he had robbed Safeway stores. And the head of the local newspaper in Tulsa, actually 2 newspapers, Jenk Jones, went to McAllister prison and found this guy teaching other people art. Now, Leo had totally learned art in prison. From these little dollar books, Valerie,
Yeah.
you draw hands over.
Self-help,
you're
right. Mm-hmm.
So Leo was an extraordinary person, but again, he was in prison for life. So he went over to, Jenk Jones met him, thought his work was magnificent, went to the University of Tulsa, found a guy named Brad Place, who was Mary Kay Place, who was an actress, was her father. But anyway, he happened to be the director of the art school there. And they gave him a scholarship for a full scholarship to school, but he was in prison for life.
Oh, my.
So it sort of, I don't know how to say it, sort of put the governor in a unique position.
It did, indeed.
Because this is a pretty prestigious school in Oklahoma, and he got a parole. And his first interview was with someone named Mary Ellen Smith, and they got married. And we got involved in doing an art show for him, but it collapsed. It didn't work out. But Vernon and I, we kind of brought him into the project.
Okay.
But Leo was an extremely dynamic person, and incidentally, a very advanced painter and artist. And he was also kind of a musician and a songwriter. And what he did was, which was, I thought, extraordinary, is we didn't have that much money, but he had a basement, and we got some carpet remnants from a carpet place, and we wound up building a recording studio in his basement.
Okay.
And out of pawn shop materials, we took that, and Mary Ellen had a connection with someone named Sonny Gray, and we wound up in the best studio in Tulsa, and we wound up on the air, and I wound up with a costume that I wore for 6 months, practically without taking it off, promoting our show. So I embodied the life of a starship captain. And this was before the starship, before the Star Trek franchise came out in film and before Star Wars. And I had that vision at the time. And so when it went on the air, it was an incredible feeling. I mean, it was unbelievable that I had actually seen this happen, and so many people were involved, especially, original music, sound effects. It just took a long time because I had no experience in doing it, but I saw that it was possible. And my friend Vernon later, actually, Morgan Vernon Fleming, he developed a business called Morgan's Jewelry. And one of the things he said to me was, I inherited a little bit of jewelry from my father. I didn't have any money. And I said, how could I do this? And then I remembered I made something from nothing. It's talking about the adventures of Ganymede Jones.
Okay, awesome. So that's some great background information on how you got to the point of a good startup. So once all those elements were brought together, then where did you take it from there to the point that you've now built your whole enterprise yourself?
I built my enterprise.
The New Galaxy Enterprise. That's the history.
Yeah, by failing in all kinds of ways, again and again. Very large projects, but ones that didn't work out for one reason or another. As an example, I was writing a film about the Mexican art revolution. And one of the people there involved in the film was Diego Rivera as a character. He was a great muralist, but his wife was Frida Kahlo. And I knew that Madonna had wanted to play that part in another film, but she had not been able to play that part. And I actually got her involved with me.
Okay, right.
I didn't know her, and I never talked to her, but I talked to her manager, and they got me into Creative Artists.
Okay.
Which was a talent agency that handled film, and they sort of packaged film too. Things didn't work out there. My investor collapsed. All kinds of things happened. I wound up getting really ill, but that was an example. I would have situation after situation like that for quite some time. And at one point, I began to really question why this was happening to me. And in questioning that, I did a lot of different things and wound up, not really that long ago, with another tremendous downfall where somebody actually tried to destroy my reputation. Well, in a way, because he wanted something from me in terms of labor that he had already surrendered, and I wouldn't do it. And so he tried to pay me back. And this was the final moment.
Right, that was final straw.
I just completely lost it. I was so filled with anger and hatred at this point because so many things had happened to me like this. And I started to work on myself. And I took anger management course. I started to...
Awesome.
I did many things. I don't want to really go into all the details.
You don't have to.
The point was to elevate my consciousness to another level. And at one point, I discovered the work of Wayne Dyer. Now, I will say that Wayne Dyer's work, what Wayne Dyer did with his life, he was a writer. He became a writer. He was a therapist, and then he became a lecturer and author. But my path had never been really much like Wayne Dyer's path, and it still probably isn't. But
to say the least,
I made the connection. I began to understand the connection between moving onto a higher level of awareness, what I call spiritual awareness, the divine presence, and moving into manifestation from that standpoint. That's different than a lot of what you call things related to the secret, where you simply visualize and you think about what you want and you sort of demand the universe bring it to you. It's a little different approach. It's based on what is stated in the New Testament: seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all will be granted unto you. And that understanding of that state actually is what drove me to create Threshold. Threshold is about looking at things from striving for and then looking for things from a spiritual perspective, including very heavy problems that this world has today. And I think among those problems, the most pressing to me is the destruction of our democratic principles in our country and the erosion of our Bill of Rights, the use of torture and surveillance, things of that nature. And these are things that I talk about in Threshold, as well as very, very positive things. But we can't just avoid that we grew up in a country that was based on certain principles embodied in the Constitution and the Declaration that may have been sort of fledgling. In other words, there wasn't really a great deal of equity in the voting. It was mostly white property owners and so forth. But the idea that all men are created equal was definitely there. And that is something that was expanded over the years to include every type of religion and minority and ethnicity. And at some point, though, everything that we have built is being challenged and being destroyed by a state that thinks that it has the right to survey everybody, to record all of our private phone calls or transactions that we do in business, everything which is completely against the rights given to us in the Declaration, the Constitution. So that's part of what I'm trying to do. And that's true in my music and in everything else that I do. I want to see our country realigned with the purposes for which it was started. I'm not saying it was ever a great example of those principles, but let's go back to those principles and start conforming to them, not bring in some other kind of non-democratic government.
I see what you're saying. In other words, you want to turn this thing around before it gets too far in the wrong direction.
It's very, very far in the wrong direction.
Right, and it's up to people. It's not going to happen from the trees, the moon, and the sun. The folks out here, the people, we folks have to do this work.
If if the people of the United States don't wake up soon, there will not only be a financial collapse, which is probably inevitable right now, but there will be a collapse of the type of freedom and government and protections for our liberty that we've had before. You don't arrest people and detain them without a trial, without access to a lawyer. You can't detain them indefinitely.
I got you. It's heavy out here, and we got to take action to turn this thing around. So I'm in 100% agreement with you on that, Johnny.
Thank you.
In relevancy back to what we were talking about here, the entrepreneurship and manifestation of your media dream, what would a person do if they wanted to connect and hook in with you? Is it a program that you offer, that you work with them? How do you dissect what they need to do in order to have their media dream come true?
I work with major media projects.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that I'm very inexpensive. I can't afford to be that inexpensive anymore because of the expenses of my business.
Absolutely.
But I am experienced in writing, plays, films, nonfiction books, websites, all the stuff. If I think a person is coming to me with a real heartfelt dream, something they can afford to actually participate in financially and personally, then it's possible for me to help them. Obviously, I can't take on a lot of people. I can only take on a small number of clients at once. And often these agreements are kind of collaborative, and they continue afterwards because I participate in trying to sell these products as well as develop them.
I got you.
And that part of it is fairly recent. And right now I have 2 books that are out there on a promotional basis in Kindle. One is called The Thrice Born. It's a science fiction version of The Fall of Angels. And that part of a 3-part film and book series that I'm working with a guy named, his name is Carlos Lopez Avery. And then another one is who I work with, Ray Boylan, who's a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. And I helped him edit his book called West Side Warrior, his biography, which is really tremendous. And that's our latest program on Threshold. But also developed something called The Foot Soldier, which is a 3-part film and book series also. And the first one is called Boots in Manhattan, which is sort of based on his background as a child, but it's quite different than the actual story that he relates in West Side Warrior, which is his memoir. So those are full-fledged, huge projects. And they've come to the beginning stages of marketing.
I see. So they would have to have somewhat of content development in mind, and then you would get in there with promotion and also with more of development and always to the marketing and sales. That's what you're saying?
I have to, generally speaking, when people come to me with a project, it's not very near professional.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot more to it than just having an idea. I've worked on, I don't know how many screenplays, probably more than 20.
Wow.
I've really intensively studied how to do this. Now, I don't mean I've read a lot of books in it.
You've done it.
Or like, I haven't read a lot of books or any books really on creating music, and yet I've written melodies and lyrics, and I've also written a great deal of lyrics for songs with the composers I work with, and I didn't really officially study that. I never.
Johnny, you're a natural. That's all. You're just a natural. That's it.
It wasn't so much being a natural, Valerie. It was being willing to absorb media of different types and then doing it. Yes, there is a certain talent involved. And the people that I work with, generally I work with, they are extremely talented people, but they haven't necessarily gone through all the experience that I have in honing their talent because they're doing something else.
Exactly.
And so the people I've worked with that have stayed with me, I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And I think it's mutual. So it's actually not easy.
It's not easy.
But it's also fun. It's
Okay.
also fun to actually collaborate with somebody who has an idea they're moved by. And now I have my own projects, which I keep working on. I kind of like collaborative projects. I have done some what you call ghostwriting. I really don't want to do that anymore, particularly, but sometimes I would if it was a project that I wanted to further. So that's sort of the way I work with people.
Very cool. So, Johnny, I so appreciate you taking your time out. I don't take it lightly that you spent it with me this afternoon. And this program is coming to an end. So if a person, you pretty much gave a synopsis if they wanted to get into the manifestation of media dreams and making it all come to pass for them. Like you said, your road, your journey has not been easy. You started out one way, ended up a total another way. I commend you on coming out full-fledged into a higher level of consciousness. I can feel that. I can see that. And I know that to be a certainty for you. What final thoughts do you have at this point in time?
Well, one thing that I would say is that if someone wanted to contact me, they could go to newgalaxyenterprises.com.
Okay.
Or maybe contact me in LinkedIn or Facebook, Johnny Blue Star. And the Blue Star is 2 words, but you'll probably find me if you look for me.
I found it.
Okay. I personally can only take a certain number of people, but I hope through my program and some of my writing to encourage people to find out something that's within themselves anyway.
Awesome. And for anybody that want to tune in to Threshold and the radio show, how would we do that?
Okay, they would go to VegasAllNetRadio.com, VegasAllNetRadio.com between 8 and 10 a.m. Pacific time, and they can hear it. Or they can go to Threshold Radio on YouTube and listen to our full-length archived programs there, which are 2 hours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining me today. And on that note, I'm going to say I love you dearly and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Valerie. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Rich Flow of Life podcast with host Valerie Kanay. We're most appreciative you took the time to be with us. And thank you. For more action, go subscribe to Valerie Kanay Talks YouTube channel and like us on Facebook at Valerie Kanay Talks and follow us on Twitter at Valerie Kanay. Until next time, we love ya.